It is school day 7 of the fake strike. Remember, it's a fake strike because school districts are actually closed. People didn't walk off the job. The school district leadership, school superintendents, school boards have decided to close schools based on the leadership of the Oklahoma Education Association, the state affiliate of the National Education Association. We've been wandering around up here talking inside the Capitol. Obviously, I'm inside the Capitol today. The lighting's not quite as good in here. And frankly, there aren't that many people in here today. This is Tuesday, of course. There were a lot of people up here yesterday. The weather's a little bit nicer. There's kind of a tailgate atmosphere outside. You can get free food outside. There's a lot of people sitting in lawn chairs just kind of hanging out outside the Capitol, but still far fewer inside and outside than there was yesterday. That's being Monday. But a couple of updates. We've been wandering around talking to people. You're going to see these interviews in just a minute. There's all this focus on that the OEA has directed on the capital gains tax exemption that equalizes Oklahoma business and property investment with Texas, which has no capital gains tax on anything because they have no income tax on anything in Texas, right? So there's all this focus on trying to raise raise this particular income tax on capital gains here in Oklahoma. But as soon as you ask anybody about it, you get a couple of different answers. You're going to hear this in just a minute. You get people saying, well, I don't really know the details of this. And nobody says what Alicia Priest has said. And you heard that a little bit yesterday on the show as well. Nobody says it's this tax or nothing. It's this tax or schools stay shut down. Everybody here says, well, I guess if the OEA says that we have to get this tax increase, then, any amount of revenue that's the same amount as that will be fine, right? People here have a lot more common sense, I think, than Alicia Priest and the OEA leadership have. They're willing to take whatever. They now have been told that full funding of schools is basically another $120 million or so. Alicia Priest on Friday would not say that, but that's what you hear from people up here. They've actually they've sort of read some common sense into all of this. We're going to wander around, talk to people here in the rotunda, and hear what they have to say. We're even going to meet a skeleton that's here protesting. Check it out. Okay, who are you? Where do you teach?
My name's Chris Hausman. I teach at Alcott Middle School in Norman, Oklahoma.
Okay, so why are you here?
I think about the opportunity where my class size is like my first hour has 30 kids in it. My second hour has 38 kids. My seventh hour has 35 kids. And then, each class is getting bigger and bigger, and the student population in Oklahoma is growing, not shrinking. And so some of the challenge begins, we're running out of money to buy and hire new teachers to get these class sizes to a manageable size. So if in these classes of 30 kids, I have more than half those kids that need an individualized education plan or need individual attention, you think about going out and teaching a kid about the Three Gorges Dam in China, okay? And now on average, I have 2 minutes to teach your child about that.
So the legislature passed this big pay raise package. It's average $6,100. I talked to one teacher last week who said, I would give all that back just to hire more teachers into my district to get class sizes down. You agree?
Yeah, absolutely. One, I think the bigger problem is pay raises are nice, and that's great. That's not why we're here. We're here because we have students that every day are having to, get the minimum amount of education because we're having to do the maximum amount of teaching. The other challenge with the package that was passed is the removal of the hotel motel tax took $60 million away from that. And I get that the way that bill was passed, the legislature has to fund that money, but then that means taking from our friends in healthcare. That means taking from our friends in the state agencies that are struggling just as well.
Well, the legislature did pass a couple other bills that the governor's expected to sign that will put I think, pretty much put most of that back, put a lot of that back, and we have growth revenue. So, it does seem like that's going to be funded. So what else? I know a lot of taxpayers are just sort of scratching their heads saying, almost $500 million, assuming the governor signs these other measures, in increased taxes, increased spending. Is there sort of one other thing education-wise that has to happen to get the schools back opened up?
Yeah, well, I think there's two challenges. One, so with some of the measures that have passed, and that's where we're talking about like ball and dice and some of those things like that, none of that can go into the education budget for the next year because the House of Representatives can't appropriate money. It doesn't know how much is there. So no matter what, that budget isn't going to impact till 2020. So we've got at least a year or two of kids suffering even with that help. So that's the first thing. I think the second thing is yes, we've gotten to a place where we're starting to fund education, but we have to go back and think about, we're not even back to where we were in 1990 if we equate for inflation and the change in economics. Well, per funding per student, we're barely back to where we were in like 89 or 85. And the question is, at what point, what is the right amount of funding to give to education? What's the right amount to ensure that our society is filled with strong leaders, strong students, and strong diversity that puts us on level to be the pride of Oklahoma that we should be?
Okay, so tell me, who are you? Where do you teach?
I am Joyce Langford. I teach at Cache Public Schools,
Okay, and what grade, what classes?
pre-kindergarten.
So why are you're here in the Capitol Rotunda? What is it that has you here?
I want funding for education.
So the legislature passed a big funding package, I guess now a week and a half ago. What was wrong with that?
Not enough.
So what? I mean, it's a $500 million. Nearly $500 million. It's a lot of money. Bigger increase than any other state agency is going to get this year, or maybe some people are telling me have ever got. So, I mean, how can that not be enough? That's a big step.
Okay, you take what they are giving and you divide it by the number of schools plus higher ed. It's not enough per pupil.
Do you think higher education is underfunded in Oklahoma?
I'm pretty sure higher education is going to get some of it. I'm pretty sure they're the ones who's getting what they call the casino money.
But do you think higher education? I know people drive around Norman, they drive around Stillwater, and they go, "How could higher education be underfunded?" I mean, those places are palatial, aren't they?
I don't think higher ed is underfunded, but I still think they get some of the government money.
So what? What is it you want the legislature to do? What gets schools reopened?
When Mary Fallon signs the bills, it needs to be signed, sealed, and delivered.
What bills or how much? What specifically are you going for?
I would really like to see the capital gain. I would really like to see her repeal the hotel motel. Absolutely, that needs to be repealed. I would also like to see the Amazon. We have to find it somewhere, and I know it's out there somewhere, but they need to get to work. That's what we have them here to do, is to work on our behalf to find it. When OEA and other places can come up with what their package, and if they would even look at what others have come up with, but it's like they are so adamant about not even looking at it. I mean, we sat in the House this morning, and when it just even brought up to listen to some of these, they didn't even want to listen.
So if the legislature, one of the questions kind of swirling around the legislature is, if they pass something that has the same amount of revenue as capital gains, say, would that be good enough? I mean, does it? Because the OEA has sort of suggested that the revenue has to come from just capital gains. People are kind of wondering why that would be.
It doesn't have to come just from capital gains, no, but it would help. They also need to look at the oil again. They need to revisit that as far as getting that up. I understand somebody is going to have to hurt. We have hurt for years. I've taught 18 years. I've had one pay raise. The very next year, you never saw that pay raise because taxes went up and our insurance premiums went up. So I was right back where I was. Somebody's going to have to hurt. We're tired of hurting. We have taken the brunt for years. And I'm not saying now it's someone else's turn, but someone needs to step up and say, this is how we can get it. And if it is the hotel motel tax and it's the people who come visit, which I'm not saying Oklahoma is someplace people might want to come and stay. But if it is out of staters or whatever you want to call them to come, so be it. We have to find it somewhere.
Thank you so much. Okay, so tell me, who are you? Where do you teach?
Kathy Snyder, Henrietta High School.
Sorry, I didn't catch it. Which high school?
Henrietta.
Henrietta. Okay, and what classes do you teach?
I teach computer and do the alt-ed program.
So what brings you to the Capitol?
We're just trying to get funding for our kids and for our classrooms.
So have you been meeting with legislators? What is it that, and there are a lot of people here, not as many as yesterday. There were a lot of people here. What is it that you're doing while you're down here?
We're marching with our signs. We're making appointments. We are meeting with our legislators.
So what are you hearing? I mean, legislators passed what was almost, I think, assuming the governor signs these other bills, going to be almost $500 million in additional funding. A lot of that's earmarked to teachers, some of it for textbooks and other things. Why is that enough? What else is it that you all want?
I don't know the exact numbers, but from what was presented, the numbers don't match up on what we need for our classrooms, and we just need more money. We've got schools that don't have art programs, don't have music programs, losing foreign languages. Those are all requirements to graduate in Oklahoma, and if we don't have these things, we're cheating our kids.
So, so with this package that passed, I've talked to now a couple of teachers who've said we wish that all that money was just available for whatever it is the school needs. I've had two teachers say I would forego getting a raise if they could hire more teachers and get class size down. I mean, is that a part of it, just giving the schools more flexibility to spend the money the way they see fit rather than the way the legislature thinks it should be spent?
I don't really know on that. I know they have some flexibility in some of the things they do. I would leave that up to my school board.
Okay. Anything else you want people to know? Well, I guess the last question really is, what is it would get schools reopened? Is there something specific that the legislature could do that would get the schools to reopen?
Just getting more revenue to education.
I mean, is there a number? So a lot of legislators, I think, thought that they had averted the strike when they passed all that a couple of weeks ago. So what? I mean, is there a number? Some people feel like the OEA moved the goalposts. I'll say I've heard that.
We're listening more to OEA. They're crunching the numbers more. I'm not a math teacher, and so we're just listening with them and working with our school board.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so tell me, who are you and where do you teach?
I'm Vera Larson. I teach in Harrah Public Schools.
And you were mentioning a meeting that you were in this morning. Tell us about that.
The House of Representatives met this morning, and they had a couple of issues that they addressed. Then it was time to talk about education. Scott Inman wanted to talk about capital gains, and the entire room was rude. They wouldn't even let him get his thoughts out. So we were able to get nothing accomplished in the House this morning.
Well, what would get accomplished by letting Scott Inman talk about capital gains? I mean, just curious here.
Well, they wouldn't even let him present it to the floor to open a discussion. They didn't want to discuss anything about it. We don't know why. Why can't we even talk about it?
Well, I mean, I think in their defense, they've debated this. They've talked about it. They don't believe that that it's the right thing to do. I mean, isn't it fair for them to move on and look at other bills and other ideas?
That would be great if someone would present a bill that could be talked about.
So why is it I'm just curious. We came over here because of the sign. I mean, why is the capital gains tax, why has that become such a focus of the OEA and the folks who are down here?
I think because it affects so few people, and other than that, I have no idea.
Okay. Because I know one of the things that I've heard is you go out and you talk to people about this tax in particular is, voters lowered this or created the exemption in 2004 partly to make us competitive with Texas. Texas has no capital gains tax on anything, and so Oklahoma said, well, we don't want to have a capital gains tax on businesses in Oklahoma and property in Oklahoma, and I mean, we've been trying to equalize our pay with Texas for teachers so that teachers don't leave. I mean, isn't it a good thing to keep ourselves competitive when it comes to business and employers with Texas?
Yes, but if your schools aren't funded and you don't have quality teachers, people are not going to open their businesses here because the public education is very poor in this state.
So what is it at your own school? I mean, what are the things that you're frustrated about that you'd like to see change?
I would like to see current curriculum, smaller class sizes, support personnel. I mean, I'd like to see a clean building that functions like we need it to function.
So I've talked to a couple of teachers who said that they would actually give up their whole raise if they could just hire more teachers into their school and get class sizes down. I mean, do you agree with sort of those priorities?
I agree that is a priority, but they're so far down on the pay scale, I don't know if that would be a discussion topic at this time.
There's a story in the Oklahoma today that one of these pictures of tattered textbooks that's been circulating even in the national media turns out to be a hoax, or at least not true. And the Owasso School District has said, no, our textbooks are not old. We pay for them with bonds. I mean, is that? Do you think that some of the things that have been said here or represented are maybe go a little bit far in kind of painting a picture of Oklahoma that's not true?
I can't speak for anybody, but my classroom, my textbooks are old, my library books are old. Kids are always coming up, can you tape this page? Can you tape this page? It's missing 5 pages. I invite anyone to come into my building, and I will show you exactly what we have to work with.
So school districts do though pay for library books and textbooks and things with bond funds. Does your school district, does it do that? I mean, does it rely totally on the state, or is it a mix of state and local funding?
We have a very difficult time getting a bond passed. Our last bond passed because it included a safe room.
Okay, so local voters actually haven't. Part of the gripe is actually with local voters, not legislators.
I don't know. I don't have enough information to comment on that.
Any closing thoughts on what is it that has to happen here to get schools reopened?
I wish that they would come together, come up with a plan, get with the education people, OEA, POE, whoever's they're negotiating with, the lawyers. Make a decision. Make it right for the students of Oklahoma. That's it.
Great. Thank you so much. Thanks for what you do. Okay, so you're not a teacher, but tell us why you're here and part of this this sort of march.
I support teachers. I support schools. I support the children, and so I'm here in support of that. I'm a psychotherapist who support public schools.
So the legislature did pass between $400 and $500 million. It's a really big increase in education funding. Why do you think this is still going on even after that?
More funding is needed.
So how much? I noticed that the capital gains tax is a part of your sign here. That's one of the things that I've been talking to people about today. Why is that important?
That's a way for us to completely fund education. We have the pretty close to the first year funded, but there's more, so teachers won't have to come back and do this again. I think that's an untapped resource that we have.
So if the legislature passed funding that was the same amount as what would come from repealing the capital gains exemption, you'd be okay with that? It's just about the total, just about that funding number and getting there. It's not about where it comes from necessarily?
It's not about the resource that it's coming from? Is that what you're asking me? Mm-hmm. It's right. As long as it gets there. I think that is an untapped resource, though, and we need to enact the capital gains tax.
So one of the things I've been asking people, the teacher pay was part of the premise that I think a lot of us agree with is we were losing teachers to states like Texas where some of the districts pay more. One of the reasons we don't have a capital gains tax on Oklahoma-based properties and businesses is because Texas doesn't have one. And so we've sort of equalized our business climate in that regard with Texas. Isn't it a good thing?
Their funding, then. How would you...
So Texas gets their funding. A lot of it's local. The reason Texas actually has a lower minimum salary for teachers, starting teachers, than Oklahoma does, but their districts have more access to local property taxes. So they really just do things very differently there. So you're open to any ideas that put the funding in the classroom. Is that fair?
Any ideas? I'm not sure about that, but definitely untapped resources. And so there are disproportionate funding for certain schools, right, in certain areas. So if it's only property tax, schools that are in lower income areas, they're not getting the same funding in their schools. So it's inclusive funding is what I'm looking at, that funding for all schools, not schools in certain districts. Right.
Thank you so much. That's great. So what's Fred here about?
Well, I like to make people laugh, and I thought, well, we can be an activist and make people laugh at the same time, so let's do that.
That's good. So what is it that brings you to the Capitol? Teachers are going to get a really pretty big raise, right? So what is it that has you still here?
Well, a raise is nice because we were underpaid, but it's more important that we have our classrooms funded because I've got 34 kids in my class, and it's really difficult when they don't give you textbooks, and even when they do give us textbooks, it's not enough for the whole class. We had a reader that we got, but there was only 25 of those, so it's difficult and that was for both grades, or both classrooms. I think we've got a total of 70 between 2 fifth grade classrooms. So we have a difficult time getting things done in class. and we have to do our own printing. I'm on my 4th box of paper. That's 20,000 sheets of paper by the time I'm done.
So one thing that's been going around, the Oklahoman had a story today about this iconic picture that's been circulated in the national media of these textbooks in Oklahoma. They're old, they're tattered, and it's been pointed out now that that's not exactly true. That school district's come back and said, we raised bond money for textbooks, which I think has opened a lot of people's eyes, that a lot of funding for textbooks and things like that, curriculum, comes from local school districts. I mean, is that a problem partly with the local school district?
Money's appropriated for the districts to use towards textbooks and things. I don't think bond issues are even allowed to be used for textbooks, if I understood right. I'm not sure if it's a case in every case, but I'm not political, and I'm not involved in the running of the school. I just know what comes into my classroom. What comes into my classroom is not enough for me to do my job.
So one thing I've heard from a few teachers, which is kind of surprising, is even here today, is that they would give back some, or even one teacher said, I'd give back all my raise if they could just hire more teachers and get class sizes down. Is part of the problem that the legislature, when they passed what they passed so far, they really dictated how that is spent? Would you rather see your local school district make more of those decisions?
I don't know. That's kind of a decision that's have to be made up there. My most concern is it is nice to be paid a wage that I can use to pay off my student debts. I mean, I was told to go to college to do this job, and if I have to pay for my student debt, then I should be able to do that with the money that I'm paid. Other professionals that go and get 4-year degrees, or 6 or 8, are paid better and are able to pay off their student loans. So I should be able to do that. And beyond that, I need my classroom funded so that I can do my job. And if my district makes that decision, then great. If the state has to make that decision, then great. I just need it done.
Okay, thank you so much. Thanks a lot. Okay, so tell me, first of all, who you are, and are you a teacher? Where do you teach?
My name's Brandy Caldwell. I teach 5th grade at Lakeview Elementary in Norman. And a big group of us people in Norman are just really ready to take action this week to make sure that we can end the walkout so that students are back in class and so that we're back with our students. So what we're doing is that we're sending people with walkie-talkies and dry erase boards out into the crowds to recruit people who are out and about the building and outside to come inside and see us so that we can walk them down to get a commitment card and go see their legislator to get a commitment to support the capital gains tax, which is Senate Bill 1086.
So why is the focus on the capital gains tax rather than just getting a certain amount of money?
The reason that we're focusing on the capital gains tax is that it feels like a really concrete thing that we can do, and the capital gains tax would tick all of our boxes and we wouldn't have to worry about anything else being passed. Additionally, the Senate already passed the capital gains tax in a bipartisan manner, so we're hoping that we can help our House of Representatives people do the right thing and get us back to school.
So if the legislature did come up with the same amount of money, though, from other sources, you'd be fine with that?
Yeah, I mean, we're not going to say no to having our schools fully funded. That's why we're here. If we have the amount of money that we need to cover all of the things that have been defunded over the years, then definitely.
So one of the arguments about teacher pay that I think really resonates with people is that we needed to pay teachers a competitive wage with states like Texas. And I think the teacher raise actually gets us right around where Texas is. I mean, one of the reasons we don't have a capital gains tax on Oklahoma-based property and businesses is that Texas doesn't have a capital gains tax at all. They don't have an income tax. They don't have any capital gains tax. Isn't it good to be competitive, not just for teachers, but also for businesses and investment between Oklahoma and Texas?
We think that it's good to be competitive, but not to the point of austerity, which is where we are now, which is why we're all here. So at some point, you exempt people from so many taxes that there's not enough money in the pot to cover crucial things. What we don't want to do is go back to school and then repeal something or not have it fully funded so that our wages are coming out of other core services that are important to our students. If I have a student being served by DHS and that agency loses funding in order to pay for this teacher raise, I'm not okay with that because it's just shifting the problem.
Does it frustrate you that if it wasn't for the Oklahoma Health Department and the Oklahoma Healthcare Authority overspending, misspending federal funds, and all these things are being investigated. You got state and federal investigations going on. If it wasn't for all of that, you would have about the same amount of money as we're talking about, somewhere north of $100 million available in the next budget, except that these other agencies have already taken that because they have these scandals going on. I mean, is that frustrating?
I'm not going to speak to whether or not it's frustrating because I don't have any control over that. What I do know is that our legislature in Oklahoma has systematically made choices to defund the public education system. I've never had a raise as a teacher. I've been teaching in this state. I love this state. I'm a product of public education in this state. And so while things might be going on with other agencies and those should be taken care of, we don't want that to be a distraction to the fact that also we don't have the funds that we need because they are cutting taxes when they shouldn't be cut, and they are we just lost funding again in the middle of the year. So we hire teachers, we have a plan, and then they cut us multiple times a year. So I just think that we need a long-term plan and a long-term solution, and it feels like capital gains is the thing that we can take action on now to help our schools get the funding that they need.
Thank you so much. Thanks. Okay, so who are you? Where do you teach?
My name is Crystal Rainey, and I teach at Central Elementary in Moore.
Okay, so what has you at the Capitol today?
Student funding has me at the Capitol. It was never about a pay raise. It was always about having funding for our classroom.
So isn't that, I mean, Oklahomans have heard for years that it's teacher pay. I mean, that is, we had a state question about it. It was the number one item on OEA's demands every single time. It was teacher pay, teacher pay, teacher pay. How could it not be about teacher pay?
It is somewhat about teacher pay, but that isn't the ultimate goal. We're not greedy gold diggers out there trying to make more money. As my sign says, I shouldn't have to pawn my wedding rings to fund my classroom. I buy more supplies a year than you could possibly imagine, and I can only write $250 of them off of my taxes.
So I mean, because I do think this has a lot of people who aren't down here confused because the legislature went through all of this, coming up with a plan, and it was really hard fought, and they got the votes, and they passed it, and this was right before the threatened walkout, and then schools closed anyway, and they did the number one item on OEA's demand list, and they actually did it a little bit bigger than what OEA asked for in the first year. I mean, would it have been better, I guess, if the legislature had just said, we're going to give this money to schools and school districts figure out how to spend it, and we're not going to earmark this for teacher salary?
No, because districts are all different. Every teacher's paid differently in every district. There's districts in the state of Oklahoma where teachers are making $5,000 more a year than I make. And I've worked in districts where I made $3,000 a year less than I make now. It's important that the funds are earmarked for education. And you said that they did what we asked, but they turned around the next day and took back $5 million in funding by repealing one of the things they had voted on.
I think it was about 50, but I do think I think they put that back. I mean, assuming the governor signs these other bills, I think they put that back now. So I mean, how much more? And they put $33 million into textbooks. I know local school districts also bond out for textbooks. So we've had Owasso telling the Oklahoman even just today that the pictures of textbooks that are all torn up there are not true, that they bonded for textbooks and they have the funds for those. Isn't some of this on local school districts to manage their funds better? I mean, you mentioned some school districts pay a lot more than others.
Well, and basically a lot of that is community support too. Some districts that pay more than others, they get stipend and money from local school districts. In the same school district, I'm at a low-income school. Our school isn't as nice as other schools in our district. So you're going to see different infrastructure problems too in older school districts in more rural areas where they are having those textbooks. I know when I taught at Hera, the middle school and the high school didn't even have textbooks. The teachers had to go out and find stuff online because their textbooks had all fallen apart and they didn't even have any.
But that is something that local school districts actually have some control over, writing bonds and passing bonds, and we see bonds passed sometimes for textbooks, other times for sports facilities and things like that. I mean, isn't some of this conversation really appropriate to have with local school boards and even just local communities, whether or not they're voting for their bonds?
I know where I'm at and more. They're allocating the funds as best they can. You do have a lot of infrastructure problems that you have to meet. I know that we also had to do a lot for safety and technology and trying to the amount of students that are enrolling in school is vastly outweighing the amount of funds that we're getting. So to be able to reallocate those funds, a lot of those funds just aren't there to reallocate.
So I got to ask you the last question. We had a legislator walk by and ask about your other sign. If you flip it around, I mean, we've seen a lot of signs directed at legislators, sometimes generally. We've seen a lot of signs directed at the governor. I mean, wouldn't this, if somebody did this to your school principal, right, and put this up on the wall, wouldn't they be punished?
Maybe it's probably a little snarky. However, she's went out of her way to demean and make teachers look like we're just greedy teenagers who have been given a car and want a better one. Seriously, she's demeaned us every way she can at every turn with her terminology and telling us that we just need to get back in the classroom. Well, if they would do their job and fund education, we'd be there. I'd much rather be with my 5th graders teaching right now than I would be standing out here.
Thank you so much. So there you go. People up here, there's a lot of people who have sort of read the OEA talking points, but they've read common sense into those talking points to say, well, I guess if Alicia Priest says that we need a capital gains tax increase, then what we really need is just that amount of money, right? And that's the OEA won't say that. Again, they will not say that. They won't commit to that. They won't commit to reopening schools if that same amount of revenue is raised from other sources. But everybody here agrees with basically that, right? People also don't know a lot about the issues of local school financing. I mean, we've talked on the show a lot about Catoosa because Oklahoma Watch did this great expose on the fact that you got a school district in Oklahoma that has MacBooks for all the middle school and high school students, that has a brand new spared no expense cafeteria. It's also a tornado shelter. That's great, but still, it is a spared no expense building. They probably could have done it for a lot less. And they have a $1.5 million press box on their football facility, right? And then they went to 4 days a week school. And this is the story that the national media never tells, not because they're disingenuous, but just because they outright lie. Look, they'd rather circulate pictures of tattered textbooks than find out whether that's true. We now know, thanks to the Oklahoman, I mentioned this in a couple of interviews, the Oklahoman has exposed this picture. And I'm sure you could expose almost every picture that's been circulated in the national press claiming to show just how dire things are in Oklahoma, that textbooks are all falling apart. I mean, look, if they are, it's the local district and the local community that haven't raised school bonds that can be used to pay for textbooks. You know, Tulsa School's last bond, they raised some money for textbooks, but they raised more than twice as much for computers, and they raised a lot more for sports facilities, right? It's local school districts and local school boards and local school superintendents that make decisions about how to allocate these resources. When you see a school that has really nice computers and really lousy textbooks, you know that there's one group of people responsible for that, and they are not here at 23rd and Lincoln. They're not in the state capitol. Those people are in local school districts. Those people are local elected school board members. So we've been up here talking to people about that. We're going to put some more information up online about that. OCPA also has a new list up of revenue bills. These are tax increases and fee increases that the legislature has passed over the last 3 years. Do you know how much they've increased taxes and fees on Oklahomans? Over $1 billion. When you include what they have just done with what they've done over the last couple of years, it's over $1 billion. You can get that list at ocpathink.org. Don't let anybody tell you that, they never raise revenue up here. They can't raise revenue. They've been cutting right and left. It's just not true. Yeah, I got to do a lot of monkeying with the numbers to make those kind of claims, right? When you look at what has happened in Oklahoma over the last couple of years, fees have gone up, taxes have gone up, and now you have people here saying, well, if they just go up a little bit more, maybe we'll let the schools reopen, or maybe not. I mean, that's the message that you seem to hear from some of the union leadership. I think a lot of teachers here really do want to go back to school. Obviously, there are far fewer people up here at the Capitol today. We'll be back up here tomorrow to see whether it continues to dwindle or what happens at the Capitol. And stay tuned to our Facebook page. That is facebook.com/OCPAthink or facebook.com/The Trent England Show. You can find us on Facebook there. Comment, share that. You can also find us on YouTube. I encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you find out when we go live, when we do our live broadcast. Obviously, we're up here walking around interviewing. We've got to kind of package that up for you and push that out later in the day. But we'll continue bringing you the news that you need to know and the analysis that you need to have about what's going on up at the Oklahoma State Capitol. I'm Trent England. Thanks for watching.